Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Cantor, ex-Covert Operative, Mercenary, and Kidnap and Ransom Response Specialist, and founder of Defense Coach. And today I want to give you some critical tips to help you survive an active shooter in the event you face a worst-case scenario. We are inundated with active shooter events almost daily. This is a threat that can happen anywhere at any time to anyone. So having a plan and being prepared in an active threat situation can help you mitigate risk and increase your chance of survival. If an active shooter is in your environment, you will need to react, escape, and/or defend. What will you do and the order in which you will do it depend upon the circumstances and the environment, and that will determine what you do. When an active shooter strikes, it could be an open area outside, a mall, a restaurant, a store, a school, or even a place of work. It could be while you're on vacation. It will likely be the scariest, most unnerving, chaotic, crazy event you have ever experienced before. And if you did not pick up on any one individual or individuals that exhibited unusual behavior in the seconds before the shooting begins, then your first indication that you're under attack, well, it may be gunfire. So in preparation of this, it's important that you plan for gunfire. Plan for the noise it makes so you can at least mitigate that fear and panic. Because the last thing you want to do is panic and freeze to death, literally. So tip number one is to plan for gunfire. You must be mentally prepared for the physical and psychological changes that occur as a result of being thrust into a fight or flight situation. Many people react first by panicking, and they simply freeze up and are unable to save their own life. But let's say you have the wherewithal to make a run for it. So here's the second tip. Take a tactical pause. Slow down for a second and determine where the shots are coming from. You will be in the midst of chaos. You're going to be seeing people moving all around you. Sometimes a group of people will be moving in a particular direction, but that doesn't mean that they're in the correct direction to move towards. So, taking your tactical pause means listening and observing everything around you. You should believe more of what you see than what you hear, especially if you're indoors. And this is because your brain can trick you when you hear gunfire. That loud bang your auditory system took in can get mixed up in your brain and cause you to think it came from one side when it actually came from the other. And this is why we have seen on so many occasions people running towards the gunfire instead of a different, safer direction. Next, when you escape and you start moving, where are you escaping towards? Do you know where the exits are? Is the place familiar to you? If it is, you will likely rely upon instinct. Now, if you're outside, where are you running to? You need to have a little plan prior to the time you just start moving. So, tip number three, be sure where you are running to before you start. You may also need to account for family or friends during this time. So, don't just go blindly with the people moving past you and think they're doing the right thing. You need to take the time to look, listen, and then move, even if it's in a whole other direction than what most people are doing at that time. Keep in mind that the shooter wants to do maximum damage. They want to have the most casualties in the time that he has. And if you're running with the pack of people, that makes it easier for him to pick off the herd, and one of those could be you. Now, when I talk to you about moving and escaping the area, this is something that you will need to do very rapidly. So here's tip number four. I want you to think about wind sprinting when you're moving, not walking quickly. Tip number five. Once you're on the move, you have to move in a zigzag pattern. You may be in an open area outside, or if you're alone inside running down a hallway or out a store. And the reason for this is that it forces the shooter to constantly adjust for your movement, both left and right and up and down. And it makes it harder for them to hit you. Tip number six. Whenever you start moving, plan, when possible, to move from a position of cover to another position of cover, or one place of concealment to another place of concealment. So cover is anything that you hide behind or under that offers you ballistic protection. In other words, that item should be dense or thick enough to protect you against the specific level of firepower in that incident. So, for example, You can hide behind a chair or a couch, but neither of those items is going to stop a handgun round such as a 9mm. And because rifle rounds travel at a much higher velocity, they have the capability to penetrate a lot of materials even easier than rounds from the normal handgun. So, effective cover may mean a concrete wall, a very heavy door, or even behind a big tree if you're outside. And if you're around vehicles, know that you can get down very low on the ground behind the wheels of a car, or stay behind the engine end of the vehicle for cover. Now, in general, a car is not considered ballistic protection, meaning protection against bullets. So if you're standing at the trunk end or just hiding out behind the doors of the car, bullets can and do penetrate cars. And that goes for hiding inside vehicles as well. Now, on the other hand, concealment is simply a hiding spot or place. And this could be anything from a utility closet to furniture. So to put it in real perspective, make sure you identify things in your environment that can stop a bullet from penetrating whatever it is you are behind. Tip number 7. This is a mental exercise. I want you to take your favorite and most visited places on a weekly basis and consider what could be cover or concealment in those places. So this could be your place of employment, it could be school, your favorite coffee shop, or restaurants. And I want you to consider the outside as well, meaning the routes you take there if walking once you park your car. What in that outdoor environment could provide cover? What could be concealment? It's easy to do this as a mental exercise simply because you likely have certain patterns that you follow in your life. So you could also do a walkthrough of these environments when you're in them and make mental notes as well. By doing this, you're planning ahead of time in the event of a worst case scenario. Tip number 8. Avoid confined spaces and places that severely shrink your escape options. What I mean by this is do not hide in a utility closet or escape to a bathroom where a shooter could easily breach that space and you have nowhere to run. This requires you to train your brain to recognize and identify such areas or places before you start running, so that whatever places you choose to move to, they offer cover or concealment and a way or ways to escape from them. Tip number 9. If you have to lock down in a room, you must barricade the door. There are 2 ways you can do this depending on what is in that space. So first, you can position a chair under the doorknob so it is angled. This method is as good as the density of the door and the strength of the chair. And even then, it's not as good as the second method. So the second method is I want you to line up or stack as much furniture and items behind the door as possible. Ideally, you want to form a wall of items that stretches to the other side of the room so that those items, they're going to become your doorstop. Tip number 10, stay away from the fatal funnel. The fatal funnel is one of the most dangerous areas to be in during an active threat situation. Any area such as doorways, hallways, or other points of entry where there is a narrowing or limited space into or out of that room or area during an active threat situation is deemed a fatal funnel. When locking down, keep in mind that bullets can go through standard doors, so don't stand behind the door. Keep to the sides or corners as the shooters tend to shoot in doorways. And you also must keep in mind that bullets can go through walls depending on the wall materials. So if the walls are constructed of standard sheetrock and wood, the walls of that space will not provide ballistic protection should the shooter decide to fire through the walls. Tip number 11. If you're locked down, stay very low to the floor line, or if possible, get up as high as possible. You know, in general, when people are shooting at human targets, they tend to shoot at chest level. So by changing your level, you can increase your chance of survival in some cases. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, check your six, put your back against the wall, stay safe, and watch those shadows.